Man, shout out to the family. Shout out to the family. I can see y'all in a few days. Is this mic on? Camera's right. Okay, mic is on. Yeah, yeah. Hotep Netches. Yeah, I felt the energy on that one. Yo, did y'all see that show last night, man? Hotep Jesus is an absolute fool for that show last night. Yo. Oh man, we was cutting up. We was cutting up, man. That was wow. So Kyle must have been in there. Yeah, we was cutting up. Yeah. Peace to the family. You know what I'm saying? Peace to the family in the building. You know what I'm saying? Ah. Listen, the grind don't stop, man. We working. Oh, we working, trying to get that working. That's it. We're just trying to get that work in. Yeah, hit the like button as you come in, family. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please hit the subscribe button. Right? Please hit the subscribe button. If you are subscribed, make sure you hit the notifications. Right? And if you subscribed already and you hit the notifications, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and hit the notifications again. Like send YouTube a message. Like, yo, put this in the algorithms, man. We want this to be, you know what I'm talking about? Yeah, we got to get this. We got to get this in the, you know what I mean? Yeah, we got to get this into the algorithms. Yeah, we got to get this into the ethers. So we did the we did the Ebers Papers, right? Yep. Yeah, we did the Ebers Papers. Where's Lauren at? I didn't see Lauren tap in. Why Lauren comments ain't showing up? But so we did the Ebers Papers, right? And okay, there she go. Yeah. So we did the Ebers Papers. Now, for the family that might not understand the concept of what we're doing with the Ebers Papyrus books. And obviously there's more on the way. I don't know how many more volumes we got to get through the Ebers Papyrus, but we got a few more volumes. But the Ebers Papyrus is a collection of books where we're going over like naturopathic, perspectives on different issues that people are dealing with, right? So we do, obviously we go through the letter D and we hit dementia, right? So we hit dementia, and obviously dementia must have struck a nerve, right? We hit dementia, and dementia must have struck a nerve, pun intended. I don't even be, these things just come out, you know what I'm saying? But we did dementia, and it must have struck a nerve, pun intended. And so, I got a bunch of comments, especially from the Patreon family. And so I had to double back. And, it might have been also the neurosurgeon, right? It might have also been the neurosurgeon thing, because obviously that video where we did the reaction to the neurosurgeon, that video is a dementia. We were talking about dementia in that video as well. And I don't know, I guess it just struck a nerve. A lot of people must be dealing with that on some level, or, for whatever reason. So we had to double back and really elaborate on some stuff that, I count on you guys for stuff like this. I don't know if y'all understand, but I count on y'all for stuff like this, because he said my granddad has it at 74. Having it at 74 is not that bad. I mean, dementia is bad at any age, because you're losing your memories and your identity, but 74 is not as bad as folks that are, in their 40s, 50s, it's rough having dementia young. That's where Kanye is headed if you keep messing with that nitric oxide, because that's what that nitrous does. Not nitric oxide, like that nitrous, like the stuff the dentists give you to numb you, laughing gas. It gives you dementia, just to make it plain, like it gives you dementia. But as we're going through the information, a lot of times I'll touch on some stuff and then I'm gone. I'm Usain Bolt combined with David Goggins when it comes to this. You know what I'm saying? We already discussed it. Everybody got, 2-3 forms of herpes. All right, cool. We out of here. Encephalitis, we out of here. You know what I'm saying? Like, and then, monthly detox kit, NRF2 system. Like, I'm thinking like, and I know it takes time, you know what I'm saying? It's so much for us to cover that, there's really no, and the audience is so, everybody's at so many, different levels with the information. There's just no way for me to gauge how long to discuss a thing. So it's like, okay, we're going to talk about it. We're going to do a nice master class type session, type vibe. And then, we out, we running again. You know what I'm saying? Like we building still. But I guess with the Jed pillar and the back issues and the nerves and just the whole conversation, even Max, Max asks some interesting stuff, from time to time. He put a comment under one of the videos about the circadian rhythm. And I'm like, bro, where you gotta get these books. Like sometimes you might ask me a question. I'm like, you're either not buying the books or you're not reading the books. One of those two things is, circadian rhythm. We have discussed circadian rhythm in at least 675 of the books. But yeah, all of those things, culminated in the new book, right? In the new book. And obviously some of my pet peeves, it was just good timing that HJ Hotep Jesus, he had he had this clip, this clip, and we was kind of reacting to the clip, some foolishness, but it was about misconceptions, primarily misconceptions surrounding melanin, and so it just so happened to line up with the release of this new research, this new information, surrounding dementia. So things just so happen to synchronize, you know what I'm saying? But this is why I tell folks, you got to get the books, because it's no way possible to go through all of the information on YouTube. Like we'll be on YouTube and it'll be an information packed video. We be going in for like 3-4 hours, and that'd be like reviewing like 5 or 6 pages, maybe 10-20 pages at the most. Like the book might be 200, 300, 500 pages. You know what I'm saying? Like, so, there's no real way to, and then a lot of times the information might be like scientific jargon. Not I ain't gonna say jargon, but it's information that needs unpacking. You know what I'm saying? It's information that needs us to expound on it and go into it and break it down and make jokes and just dig into it so we could get it in our soul. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's no way to really go through all of the information. That's why you got to get the books. You know what I'm saying? You got to get the books. I think I'm even behind discussing books. Like I'm behind on discussing books. I really shouldn't even be discussing this new book because it's not even out yet, I don't think. And we should be discussing Pump and Iron. Like we should be discussing Ebers Papyrus Volume 6 and high blood pressure. So those we're going to have those conversations coming soon to a theater near you. But just with the timing of where the conversation, and then tech, Architect had hit me up. I don't know if y'all all remember the twins, I'm saying, my political brothers, but he hit me up on some melanin, like, and the biggest problem, I guess, is that the foolishness overshadows the science. The foolishness overshadows the science. And so my hope, right? I don't even sit right here. I'm about to move this chair over here, erase the board. We getting ready to get, but my hope is with this conversation, and then people get the book, like it expands. I don't even want to use that terminology because expand our view of the subject may be the wrong way to go. Instead of going out, we need to focus in. Like we need to go in. Like, I just want to maybe provide some urgency. Maybe make some connections between your pigment system and and the way, that you view your body in a way that maybe you hadn't thought before. And so, it gives you just higher priority, to know. Like, for instance, somebody in the chat said, their grandpa has dementia at 74. So that means chances are your grandfather's dementia started in his 30s. See, that's the scariest thing about different types of dementia. Dementia takes anywhere from 20 to 50 years to incubate. Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, these things take 20 to 40 years to incubate. And that time of incubation is the time to strike. That's the time to strike, because how long it takes to replace brain cells, and the fact that there's some regions of the brain that it takes so long to replace that you can't replace them. You know what I'm saying? Like there's some regions where you can do some stuff and replace the brain cells, but you know, like once you get into the window where you're at a critical mass, where you've got so many dead brain cells and so many other damaged brain cells, there's no herbs you can buy at that point. There's no medication you could buy at that point. It don't matter if you move into David Goggins' house and you run a 200-mile, like it at that point, you blew it. It's one of those mistakes. It's like being a drunk driver. You know, a drunk driver go out there and they run over some folks and kill somebody or a child or something like that. You blew it. You blew it. It's nothing you can do after that to fix that mistake. And that's what people have to understand about this. You know, there's a point of no return. Like this is a silent killer. It takes decades in order for this to become problematic. You have to ignore this system in your body for decades in order for this to become problematic. But once it becomes a problem, the only thing you can do is it's almost like hospice. It's like outpatient hospice work. Listen to what I'm telling you. You guys may not be familiar with hospice work. Hospice work is basically where you got something wrong with you and the doctors have determined there is nothing they can do to help you. And so because there's nothing they can do to help you, at this point, it's, you know, let's just what can we do to make it easier? So if it's something associated with chronic pain, what type of painkiller you want? Don't worry about getting addicted to the painkiller or side effects or anything like that, because you up out of here. So what kind of painkiller you want? You know, take one, take two, have a cocktail, and because at this point it's just about managing symptoms, you know, so you can go ahead and walk on off into the light comfortably. You know, tie up your loose ends, say your goodbyes. You know, the thing that you wanted to always do. Go do that. Yeah, because you on the clock right now, right? So that's what it is with some of these brain issues. You know what I'm saying? Once it's there, once it's past point of no return, and literally that's what dementia and Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and all these different things represent, like point of no returns. You know, I mean, is there a chance that somebody can turn around some stuff? I've seen it. I've done it. You know what I'm saying? I've done it. You know, had an old guy in a wheelchair, couldn't remember his name, his family's name, put a program together for him. My man hopped out the wheelchair and got back to living a little bit. But it's not the same as catching the thing that's creeping up on you, you know, catching it creeping. You know what I'm saying? Like catching the creeper creeping. You know what I'm saying? Like the robber is getting ready to come into your house and rob everything and rape everybody and kill everybody and just go nuts, right? But it'd be great if your security system could catch him outside the house. You know, outside the house. Maybe you could call police or security or handle it yourself or whatever the case may be. That's the idea, you know, is with this, it's not the same as you know, because I think on the internet, people are used to, you know, tackling, you know, high blood pressure and stuff, you know, low hanging fruit. And not to not to, disrespect anybody or make anybody's situation feel lighter than it is, and like it's not a risk or whatever the case may be. But, fixing high blood pressure or diabetes is, as long as the person's willing to put in the work and study and learn, it's not, it's not really rocket science, but this ain't that. This ain't that. This requires a little bit more study and understanding, and you got to get on it while it's not a problem, which is the hardest thing for a human to do. It is literally the hardest thing for a human to do. Think about how much procrastination is involved with you doing stuff that is an imminent threat. Like, you got a test coming up on Friday and you still not studying. You still haven't turned that paper in. You got a deadline for this work, for this book, for your job. You like, think about how many things we procrastinate on that we know we have to deal with. You got certain things you got to put in place to be able to make bill money. Like, you got to pay the mortgage, the rent, you think about how many of those things we procrastinate on. Now think about how crazy it is for us to address a problem that's 25 years out. Yeah, this is 25 years away. We ain't got to worry about it. It's 25 years away. Yeah, 25 years out. I'm telling you something. We're going to get into the information, but I'm trying to tell you something. Like, I can't put this into better words, you know what I'm saying? Or maybe I could. And, I don't want my personal failures or lack of properly articulating my feelings and sentiment to, to not come across Elon Musk, right? I want y'all to really understand this. Like, Elon Musk is where he's at because he understands probability, right? That's why that book is so important. You got to get the probability book, the Ma'at book. You know what I'm saying? You got to get the Ma'at probability book. You got to have that, right? But that's how Elon got where he's at, right? So he's not banking his financial future on rocket ships and missiles and all. That's not what he's banking his financial future on. He's banking his financial future on brain disease. He's banking his financial, technological, like that's what he's on. He's on that, working on the neurological implant. Like, that's where his next trillions is. That's what he's solid in the fact that no, this is going to be worth quadrillions. We're going to be able to literally print money once we, figure out how to have the fake neurons. Like, once we make microchips to replace neurons, it's over. And it'd be a travesty. Like, it'd be a tragedy, a travesty. It'd be like, I don't even have the adjectives right now to tell you how crazy it would be for Elon to be able to make fake neurons, and for him to be able to make fake neurons, and for you at home to have never even known how yours actually functions. Like, for people to be getting implants and not even know how their brain actually works. Like, you never learned that, but you burned it down. And by the time you're interested in learning it, it's only because you're scared you're losing it. And they're telling you, oh yeah, you're having these short little memory lapses, and, you're having conversation and you're forgetting the words you want to say, or you park your car at a supermarket, come outside, and you got to use the doot-doot to find your car. Oh yeah, those little memory lapses. Yeah, dementia's already, it's over. It's already on you. It's already on you. Yeah, it's already on you. It's already on you. You've already lost X percentage of brain function. Yeah, you've already lost X percentage of brain function. And it's an exponential thing. It's an exponential thing. So it's not something that happens like increments like this. It's, it take a long time to damage one, and then it take a long time, but not as long to damage two. But once you damage 10, it might take a third of the time to damage 30, and then of half the time to damage 100, and it snowballs. So we need to really understand the totality of the body, and it is the pigment system. And that's where the title, the dope game, that's why the title of the book is the dope game. Right. And it's my second attempt to really bring this point, because this is the second book I named the dope game. But it's I think I did a good job being straightforward this time. And the reason why it's called the dope game is because the game, the number one catchphrase, the word is dopamine, right? Dopamine is where, when people say dope, or dope game, right? Those are slangs. Dope is a slang for heroin in our world. When my mom was young, dope was a slang word for smoking weed, or reefer. That, they would call it reefer, you know what I'm saying? But it was a slang term. And it's crazy because, you kind of dip into the CIA, MK Ultra, conspiracy bag. You kind of have to dip into that bag, because it's like a vestige of that time era, right? Because you wonder, how did a scientific word become a slang term for street drugs, right? How did that happen? How did that happen? Because the scientists put the drugs on the street. They were engineering certain drugs to put on the street, and they were engineering the drugs to put on the street based on the natural drugs, right? Because you have a drug system, right? You have a drug system, right? And this is where you get into the whole war on drugs, was the war on, like Hispanics and blacks, and this whole kind, all of these things that make a little bit more sense. I'm not saying go down to conspiracy theory. We're not going to spend much time on those conspiracy theories. There's other folks that have done videos on all that kind of stuff. But studying marijuana, studying cocaine, studying opium, and the effects on the brain, you realize that all drugs, sugar is included, right? Sugar included, sex is included, pornography, Pornhub. When you hit the like, like when you post content and somebody likes the video, all of these things release dopamine in your brain. All of these things stimulate dopamine, right? So whether it's crack, mollies, rolling up weed, somebody liking your video, jogging, in the sun, throwing your baby up in the air and catching your baby and spinning around, hugging your baby, or all of these things, releasing dopamine in the brain, right? And, they cause dopamine spikes of dopamine. And those spikes of dopamine feel really, 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 really good. Really good. And so it makes you feel good all over. And you want to do that again, right? You want to do that again. Like the dopamine system is your It's your entire everything. Your dopamine system is literally your entire everything. Like it's the thing that governs the entire thing. Like you have parts of your body, you have hormones, neurotransmitters, you have like a whole bunch of stuff. And like stuff is ranked in importance based on how many other systems depends on it and blah, 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 blah. Right. Well, this is the everything thing. Like dopamine is the everything thing. Everything is running on dopamine. Everything. Everything. This is why you can get addicted and it's so crazy. You know what I'm saying? Like, because everything. There's not a thing in your body that's important that's not running on dopamine. The everything thing. Right? So you have specific neurons in your brain that produce dopamine. And you have a whole bunch of neurons in your brain that don't produce dopamine. But guess what? The ones that don't produce dopamine take instructions from the ones that do produce dopamine, right? And the heart runs on dopamine, your mitochondria run on dopamine, your muscles and all that run on dopamine. It's the everything thing. Okay? So this is the dope game. And the dope game is, you know, is levels to even understanding this, my concept of the dope game, because, you know, race relations have drastically, no matter what anybody says, race relations have drastically improved, whether it's by force or just, you know, sports and entertainment brung folks together and whatever the case, however you want to slice it, right? But our institutions that are 100, 200, 300 years old, 400 years old, well, the roots of these institutions are still racist. You're like, that's just what it is. And so pigment doesn't have a conversation. We have literally put like a hypothetical knife to the throat of science and health by constantly discussing melanin and using the fact that as Black folks, and I'm not going to say Black folks, but urban, right? Because it's more than, you know, because Black folks from the suburb don't really like, but it's the urban, you know, us from the neighborhood. Like we literally create culture. We make what's cool. Like other people make the money because they facilitate our creativity, but we create what's cool. And so as the conversations began to spread globally, because this is the thing, you know what I'm saying? Like now that everything that's important has to have a foothold in pop culture, you have the colonization of melanin. So now you have white folks trying to colonize the digital real estate around the term melanin. So when you look up melanin, you'll see some quantum biology with a white guy and he'll be breaking it down. You won't see, you know, Dr. Richard King pop up. You won't see Dr. Lila Africa pop. You won't see the people that spent 50 years. You won't see Sheikh Anta Diop or Sheikh Anta Joe, you know, like you won't see these people pop up, right? You'll see, you know, some white guy that published 2 or 3 scientific papers pop up because now they're colonizing the concept of melanin, right? And it's still, you know, like in a very surface level, trendy kind of way where it's not really getting to the real issues. And that's primarily because, again, the people colonizing the term, they don't have to wear it. So it's like, like going to the zoo, you know what I'm saying? Like you can talk about the animals, but the animals' issues aren't your issues. You getting ready to go back to the house, right? You getting ready to go back home. These ain't really your issues. So the fact that we're getting the Alzheimer's and dementia at a rate, we're getting it faster than other folks. We're getting it more pronounced. Like we're dying faster. Like everything that's associated with brain disease is happening more to the darker people than everybody else. And then even like amongst Black folks, the darker you are, the more like, so it's not even just Black, white, you know what I'm saying? It's like, okay, let's exclude everybody and just talk about Black folks. The darker you are, the rougher you have it, right? So, so yeah, it's a more pressing issue. It's a more pressing issue when it's real for you, right? When it's real for you. And so the thing that you have to understand about the dope game is a part of the dope game is like, not really discussing any of this stuff, keeping folks pretty much ignorant to this, right? And so the whole neuromelanin conversation is still like the Wild Wild West. Neuromelanin is still the Wild Wild West. It's not really a conversation surrounding neuromelanin. Like they keep that super quiet. Super quiet. Even when you look up the research on Alzheimer's, they might tell you, okay, well, the locus ceruleus or the substantia nigra is becoming, it's losing neuromelanin. And so this is a hallmark sign of, brain degeneration. But outside of that, we don't really understand what's what. Like, we don't really have a context. You know what I'm saying? Like, and for me, I'm always insulted. Just know that. I'm the cranky old, I've turned into the cranky old guy. Like, I don't know if y'all seen Dennis the Menace, but I'm the neighbor of Dennis the Menace. You know what I'm saying? Like the old cranky guy that's always yelling about Dennis, like trying to tell everybody how bad Dennis is. Because I'm offended by everything I see on the internet. You know what I'm saying? When folks are talking about autophagy, that's a melanin conversation. I'm offended. When folks are talking keto and ketosis and how ketones benefit, that's a melanin conversation, right? So you don't get autophagy and your body doesn't produce ketones until melanin concentrating hormone hits like a super high threshold. So melanin concentrating hormone is the initiator, top down, of those processes throughout the body. Right. So for me, when those conversations are happening and I don't hear first and foremost, like, boop, melanin concentrating hormone, Dr. Inky should be referenced, right? Yeah, I get annoyed. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm like, ho, that's, yeah, we gotta bring that back right there. Like, ho. When we have dopamine conversations, right? You hear all these folks talking about dopamine and, your attention span and how you can increase your intelligence with the dopamine. That's a neuromelanin conversation, right? That's a neuromelanin conversation. So there's different parts of the pigment system, but everything in your body falls under the pigment system. So there's no possible way for you to really understand how your body works if this secret, if they keep like this secret going where they just like got the three tops with the ball under it and they just keep going like this and moving the ball back around, you don't understand that there's just one system that's controlling all these different things, right? So neuromelanin is produced in your brain when neurons do one or two things, right? When they build up a lot of norepinephrine, the norepinephrine itself becomes neuromelanin. I'm going to say that again. And don't worry, we'll probably repeat some of this stuff 1,000 times before the video's over. But some of this stuff, I know it might be the first time you're hearing this, so you might need to hear it like Umar. Like I might have to, norepinephrine is the precursor of neuromelanin. Norepinephrine becomes neuromelanin. Norepinephrine accumulates in neurons and then becomes neuromelanin. Right? So when you hear people having conversations about norepinephrine, that's a neuromelanin conversation. Period. Anything that boosts your level of norepinephrine boosts your level of neuromelanin. End of story. Right? When you hear dopamine does the same thing. When dopamine levels increase inside a neuron, the neuron converts dopamine into neuromelanin. So any dopamine conversation is a neuromelanin conversation. So this is what Dr. Africa and, some of the old school guys was talking about in terms of, being at higher risk for addiction, because it's the neuromelanin system that's driving addiction, right? So think about what I just said. I'm gonna rewind it back and try to bring some of the elders into the conversation for a second, because they said some stuff 20, 30 years ago that was so advanced people didn't even catch, right? Primarily because there was no articles in scientific journals to reference what they were saying. So because there were no scientific articles and journals that were easily accessible on the internet for people to validate what they were saying was discarded, right? Because who are these guys? You know what I'm saying? That's how we get treated. Who are these guys? You know what I'm saying? Like, dude running around in the dashiki speaking to 40, 50 people. If he knew what he was talking about, he'd be teaching at Duke University. Or if he knew what he was talking about, he'd be teaching at Stanford with a PhD. He doesn't have a PhD. He doesn't know what he's, right? So any drug that you use, any narcotic, smoking weed, right? The good feeling you have is because it increases dopamine in your brain. Let's stop right there. Right? Let's stop right there with that. Just put that in your brain and put that right here. Boop. Now, on the other side over here, the primary way that your neurons, your dopaminergic neurons, produce neuromelanin is dopamine has a threshold inside of these neurons. And whenever there's too much dopamine, it takes all of the excess dopamine and turns that into neuromelanin. So you increase dopamine, you increase neuromelanin production. You initiate and or increase neuromelanin production, right? Drug, increase dopamine. Increased dopamine increases neuromelanin. Do you see the correlation now? Right? And so increase of neuromelanin is amazing. Your body loves that. Your body loves increasing neuromelanin by all Malcolm X style. Your body loves the feeling of increasing dopamine and anything neuromelanin. It's the reason why we love scary movies and to get scared. Yeah, because we can increase those, norepinephrine. Yeah. We get scared. Oh, yeah, let me go back again. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's go to the scary house for Halloween. Like you get scared, you enjoy it because, more neuromelanin, right? More neuromelanin, more of the high processing stuff, the super high end processing stuff, right? And so, but it's a different type of melanin than what we have in our skin. It's not just because it's in the brain, right? It's not just because it's in a neuron either, right? What makes neuromelanin different is neuromelanin is made. Well, neuromelanin, first of all, is made without the use of melanosomes. You don't need enzymes for it, at least not the enzymes that are present inside a melanocyte. So the process of making it is different. And because the process of making it is different, obviously the end product is going to be different. So neuromelanin is made up of different types of pheomelanin and eumelanin, right? But all neuromelanin is a combination of the two, right? So my neuromelanin is a combination of pheomelanin and eumelanin, right? So we could, like in the black-white thing, right? Because we know on the surface is pheomelanin or eumelanin. But in your brain doesn't work like that. Neuromelanin is a combination of pheomelanin and eumelanin, right? All of those molecules have a pheomelanin core and a eumelanin coating, right? They have a pheomelanin core or eumelanin coating. Now, I think as the science continues, they're going to have to differentiate different types of neuromelanin because you have different types, right? If there's a neuromelanin that forms from norepinephrine, that's obviously not the same as the neuromelanin that forms from dopamine. So the same way we got pheomelanin and eumelanin, they're going to have to come up with some new names to distinguish, different types of neuromelanin, right? But this is the dope game. The dope game is to keep people dopes, right? Because dope also means ignorant, right? Unlearned, right? So the dope game, it's interesting that word has so many different meanings. You know what I'm saying? Like keeping people stupid, is keeping them dopey, right? Keeping people sedated, high, right? Asleep, right? So, not knowing their own true nature, and then being able to use sleight of hand to confuse people, right? So they'll say, when you look up neuromelanin, they'll say things like, and it's crazy because there still has all of those racial ideas associated with melanin itself being a toxic waste product, like a trash, and that's the problem. So if you look up neuromelanin, they'll still have where it's a thing that accumulates as you age. So it's a sign of aging, it's a waste product of dopaminergic product, the more you use these neurons and the neurons age, the more neuromelanin accumulates. It's a sign of dying. It's a sign of losing your mind. It's a sign of aging. No, it's not. It's not. It's actually a sign of memory formation. Right? It's a sign of memory formation. So the older you get, the more memories you have, right? So the more memories you have, it's like somebody who uses their computer for a living, right? Somebody who uses their computer for a living, right? Just think about it this way. It's the easiest way to understand. It just immediately slaps all of those ideas right out of the park in just one foul swoop, right? If you use your computer for a living, maybe you're making beats, engineer, or you make programs or whatever the case may be. Or maybe you write books or, do lectures or anything. When you get your computer, no matter what computer it is that you get, if you buy a computer that works for whatever you're trying to do, typically you can live off of your computer for a while. Yeah, you can live off the memory on that computer, right? But as you continue to work, right, and your body of work increases, guess what you start to accumulate? Hard drives. Yeah, you start to accumulate little hard drives all over the place because your computer memory can't hold everything. And you don't necessarily need to buy a new computer every time you use up 1,000 gig, every time you run through some memory. So you just go get a hard drive to store that memory, right? So the longer you use that computer, or the longer you stay in that field, right, the more memory you have. That's all neuromelanin is. That's why when you're born, you don't have any, right? Or you have almost very little, because you don't have any information. You don't have any information in your mind that your brain needs to constantly access. There's nothing, right? But as you start to build the mind and fill the mind, now you have to have neuromelanin to be able to access these memories. Right. So it's not necessarily a sign that you're aging or dying or like this negative context that's put on neuromelanin. You know what I'm saying? Obviously, it's something you need because as you lose it, you lose your mind. Like that is the most common sense, straightforward, like you have centers in the brain where there's a lot of neuromelanin. Then when those centers start to like how you drive in your car and you start to notice the gas going down, down, down. As those neuromelanin, as they start to move down to E, you literally start to not be able to like access your memory. You stop remembering things, right? So obviously you lose control of your brain. Your brain even gets smaller. Right? Your neural networks start to dissipate. They start breaking up, right? So obviously, whatever that stuff is, yeah, that's to make it do what it do stuff. Yeah, that's not the waste product. That's not the sign of death. That's not the, that's the good stuff, right? That's the good stuff. But so much of power, so much of global power, societal control is based on this, right? So when we have our conversations about people becoming illiterate and dumbed down and using the machines to count and think and remember for us, it has a direct correlation. Because when you stop reading, your brain starts to atrophy. Right? When you stop reading, your brain starts to atrophy. And so at that point, when you stop having the natural ways to stimulate the brain, you're more susceptible to wind up, looking for that baby oil ditty, like you need some other stimulation. Right? So you got a bunch of people like what they do over there on the Brother Rich Network, where they, they're promoting drugs and anal G spots and all that kind of, that's consciousness. That's not consciousness. Consciousness is building the mind. Those things destroy the mind. They don't build the mind. They don't build the mind, right? Ayahuasca, psilocybin, like psychedelic mushrooms, those things do not build the mind. Those things destroy the mind. I want y'all to understand that, right? And you go back and you go, oh no, but the ancient priesthood, they were using these things. Yeah, they were using those things as ways to explore the mind, specifically, at a festival, or for an emergency, or like they weren't just popping mushrooms every day, or it's Friday, let's go get some mushrooms like that. That's not what they was doing. They wasn't just using them to get high. You know what I'm saying? Because you burn out the brain, right? That's not what that's for. What you're supposed to be doing is filling your mind with lots of information, right? And then at some point, you go through a procedure of fasting and cleansing and doing some other things, and then you can, use some extra help, like going through the library files, so to speak. Like you might use an ayahuasca or a mushroom or something like that to help you go through all of the library files, that you know, but people that don't read and don't study should never use ayahuasca or mushrooms. What are you using those for? That's only going to take you on an emotional trip, and yeah, because you don't have anything else in there. You don't have anything else in there. And even if you do that, that should be like, 4 or 5 times in your life. Like, let's say you live to 100, you maybe once every 10, 20 years or something like that. You should try maybe a trip like that at best. You know what I'm saying? Like, but to get high and play with that, that's not that. That's not that. The spiritual world and spiritual concepts is nothing to play with. Like people ask me about certain other spiritual stuff because I'm Haitian. I'm like, well, the one thing I know is that you shouldn't play with the voodoo. Like, if you think that you're trying to make a deal with some spirits for a job promotion or for a girlfriend or a boyfriend, you are insane. You are insane. Yeah, that's what I know from firsthand experience. Leave that stuff alone. Don't play with that. If you don't understand the word reverence, don't play over there. That's not the place, right? So, Super Chat Peyton to the rescue. That's what we're going to start calling Peyton. Super Chat Peyton. Man, I think people forgot the Super Chat even worked. Man, we must have forgot the Super Chat even worked. That's why you see people looking crazy. You see them talking all this super hyper spiritual stuff, and then 5 years later, they look like crackheads. Yeah, because you was playing. You was playing with that. You was somewhere where you wasn't supposed to be at. Like in the train station, they got the tracks and they be like, don't touch the third rail. They'd be like, oh, is that where all of the power is at? Yeah, let me grab that and see. You got fried. Yeah, you was doing, you did too much. You OD'd over there. You went crazy. Yeah, you went crazy. What was you doing touching that over there? You wasn't supposed to be touching that over there. Yeah.
Myron! Myron!
What?
What are you doing? What you doing?
What you talking about? What am I doing?
You reading them nasty books again, right, Myron?
Everybody read no nasty books, man. You scared the hell out of me. What you talking about, man? Wait, I ain't did that in about 2 weeks.
You called yesterday 2 weeks. What you reading? What you reading?
You scared the goddamn book, man. Dr. Inky. I went on Amazon and got 3 Dr. Inky books because I'm reading about melatonin and biochemistry.
What is, Myron, that's not even a, first of all, it's not melatonin and whatever it is that you just said. It's melanin and biochemistry. You can't even pronounce the word, so how you reading? How you reading, Myron?
I'm not looking at the pictures. I got the books right here. I'm looking at the pictures. You know, this ain't nothing nasty about this. So what are you talking about? I got all the books right here. What are you talking about?
Myron, you don't even know how to read. Every time we get mail, you bring it to me. You think I don't know that?
I went to I got hooked on Phoenix. Now, what you talking about? I was hooked on Phoenix, so I know how to read.
As of when? Because first of all, hooked on phonics, I believe it's for kids. There's no such thing as hooked on Phoenix. And if I recall, you're the same person that thought reindeer was pronounced reinder, and you're the same person that thought pigeon was pronounced piggion. So it makes sense that you went to hooked on Phoenix.
Man, such a dumbass.
No,
you always trying to say somebody can't read. I know exactly what I'm talking about, man. I'm reading the books. I got the book. I got the goddamn receipt right here. I got the goddamn receipt right here for the books. What you talking about?
Well, you need to return them for...
All right, so in the same way as we proposed and then conclusively proved that diabetes was melanin disease, then demonstrated a little less emphatically that heart disease was cardiac melanocyte disease, right? We're going to get to brain disease as a neuromelanin disease. Where is my... Okay, here we go. Yeah. True love shouldn't be this complicated. Shouldn't be this complicated. Okay. I think we talked about which book did we talk about REM sleep in? Is that Inky and the Brainwave? Right? I think we talked about Inky and the Brain. I think it's in the Inky and the Brainwave book. That we talk about REM sleep. Right? And we talk about the neuromelanin. I think it's in the ventral tegmental, something to that effect. I might be butchering. But I think that's the area of the brain that controls the gamma waves, or just synchronizing the your brain activity for REM sleep. I had to look at it. But even the conversations on the internet about REM sleep, right, and the benefits of REM sleep, that's neuromelanin activity, right? That's neuromelanin activity. You know what I'm saying? But I think white folks probably scared to discuss it because, you know, for so many years, people have been saying they don't have none. That's cool. Maybe God left it for me, right? You know, the door God opens for you, no man can close. So maybe nobody's discussed it, so we could come along and discuss it. And I can get you folks to like help me keep my lights on and, you know, feed my children, you know, make a sandwich, do something useful with myself while I'm alive. Right? All right, so what should we postulate? All right, so maybe we start with this. Maybe we throw this on the board. Right? Maybe we throw because I think this is the big step, right? Right? That's the big step. Right? That is the big step. This is where all the magic happens. Right? Tyrosine, aromatic amino acid, right? So we know what? Right? What do we know? Yo, my hanks are good. Yo, this is crazy. Okay, let's try this again. Right? Let's try this again. Come on, Hank. You gotta do better, man. Okay, boo. Okay, we cooking. There we go. Yeah. Right? Our favorite shape. Right. So hopefully you guys can see how we've been building over the years, like consistently building, right? Because every time we have a conversation, notice the conversation is based on the building blocks, right? So this is aromatic amino acid, right? Aromatic amino acid. And the reason why aromatic amino acids are the fundamental building block of all your pigments is because of this, right? So when we have that old Solomon's wisdom and the Star of David and the I Ching, the I Ching and the boo boo and the right structured water as the basis for it's this shape. This is the shape of life, right? This is the shape of life right here. This is this hexagon, all right? That's the magic shape. Why is that the magic shape? Because this hexagonal shape allows amino acids to interact with light, right? So it allows amino acids to build structures, right, that are proteins, but a specific class of proteins called pigments that can harness light for whatever, right? Now, these are going to come together and make a whole another big shape, right? And that big shape will have little spots in it where you can, like the Transformers, where you could put your energon cubes. And depending on what type of, crystals you put in there, determines what the pigment is able to do with the sun or with light in general, right? So if we create a pigment lattice, right, with these rings here, these rings, and we stick magnesium in there, that will allow that pigment to harness sunlight to produce sugar, right? If instead we use sodium, right, that will allow, the pigment to be able to convert light into electricity. Or, if we put iron in there, right, it will, right? So depending on what goes in there determines what it does with the light, what type of light it works with, blah, 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 right? But the magic begins with this guy, the aromatic amino acid, and then his buddy, right? It's really two of them. Well, it's really three of them, but it's really two of them, right? So you got tryptophan and tyrosine, right? These are the guys that make the magic happen, right? You got phenylalanine, and phenylalanine gets converted to tyrosine. So depending on whose research you're looking at, tyrosine might be essential, might be non-essential, right? But that's because the relationship with phenylalanine, that's another aromatic amino acid. So it's the three of them, right? And only plants make them. Only plants make them. So this is where we can go down conspiracy theory road with the food problems, right? When you hear about spraying the pesticides and the fertilizers and all that on the food, it's because it's a thing called the shiki. I don't even know how to pronounce this word. I say shiki, like dashiki, and then I say ma'at, like the goddess Ma'at. I say the shiki Ma'at pathway. That's how I can, that's not only my own mispronunciation, but as a mispronunciation, it's a mnemonic device to help me remember the term, right? Because this is the main, how my inky vision be, like everybody looking over there, I be looking over there. So when folks was like, yeah, the pesticides is messing up the food and it's turning the black seeds white and it's making the boy frogs into girl frogs and the woo, 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 woo. Me, you take a look, it's in a book, the reading rainbow, right? Me, I was like, wait a minute. So so let's look up the chemical structure of the, Now, exactly how is that affecting the plants? Oh, and then I found something even more sinister than what everybody else was talking about. I got even more paranoid. I'm like, whoa, 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 wait a minute. So you're saying these chemicals, they target this area inside of plants. And this area inside of plants is the area that is like the factory. Like plants have a little factory that makes these aromatic amino acids. And these chemicals, whatever they putting on the food, you know, it destroys this. I'm like, oh, hold up. Now, if there ever was some most super sinister plot against black folks, I'm like, this is it. And we don't see nobody out there on the front line raising, you know, a fuss but white folks. I'm like, God bless their soul. I just don't understand what's up with we forget about all the good white folks that's holding us down. Like, y'all just don't understand how much. But listen, white folks, if no other black folks appreciates the effort, it's me. Because they was out there. Don't put glyphosate on our food. Boycott, like whoever, like they was out there throwing, food at the windows of the supermarket. They was going crazy. I was like, black folks should be out there, because while we getting juiced up talking about the melanin, there's no melanin without this. Yeah, without the tyrosine and the tryptophan, there's no pigments. And if they put the chemicals in the food, that destroys the food's ability to make the amino acids that you need to make I was like, no, it should be a whole bunch of dark-skinned people, not even black folks. All of the light-skinned guys with freckles, you can stay at the house. It was supposed to be a whole bunch of dark-skinned folks. Not in our neighborhood. It's all right though. We had our white brothers and sisters out there kicking ass and taking names. They was representing us in spirit. They didn't know they was holding us down, right? Or maybe we just didn't know that they were rightfully angry because they understood the problem with messing with your neurochemistry. We just didn't understand that we are more sensitive to these changes than everybody else. So while this is going to impact everyone, once again, when the line forms for who gets dead first, we at the front of the line. And we don't know how we got there either. We're like, man, what is we doing? You look up front ahead of you, ain't nothing but dark skin. You look in the back, like, wait a minute. How come all them white folks way back there? And what we doing way up at the front of this line? Like, how we, Yeah, I'm explaining it to you right here. This is how this happened. Right? So is there some impact to having decades worth of food where the aromatic factories has been tampered with or poisoned, or maybe it's probably an accumulation of those things. I would say that definitely, we can't rule this out, right? All those watermelons with the white seeds, and we can't rule that out. Right? We can't rule that out. That the fruits, the vegetables, and the grains that then become all the other things we eat, because they've had their aromatic amino acid content, right? We can't rule that out, but that's not the big deal. I think ignorance is a much bigger issue that we have to tackle, right? So anyway, this is the beginning of the program. This is where all the magic happens, right? And This is also right up in there where pheomelanin and eumelanin get determined, right? Pheomelanin and eumelanin get determined right up around in here, right? Right up around in here. Because from here, we go into dopamine, right? And then dopaquinones, and we go deeper into the dope game, right? Dope this and dope that, dopachromes, and it gets crazy, right? But right about somewhere in here, right? So we don't really need the specificity right now, right? In the book, we got the exact, but right around somewhere in here, right, is, you go this way, right? And then you down eumelanin road, right? Eumelanin, right? And that's the good, perfect, complete. That's the eumelanin road. You go over this way, and you have either one of two things happen. Well, yeah, you got glutathione or cysteine, right? So if you have wherever the magic is happening, so this is not like specific to melanocytes in the skin, the heart, the brain, wherever. This is wherever the magic's happening. If you have cysteine and glutathione present in the matrix when the magic is happening, that's how you get pheomelanin. And so you have two types of pheomelanin. So all pheomelanin is not, you have two types. You have the primary cysteine-based pheomelanin, and then you have the primary glutathione-based pheomelanin, right? And then you have two types of eumelanin, dark and darker, black and purple, right? You know what I'm saying? Like you have, so there's specificity there, right? The only real difference at this point in the conversation from external or peripheral melanin, like in the skin and the brain, the formation, is that this is all happening typically inside a melanosome, right? Which is the enzyme that actually does the magic, right? That's where all the electricity is, right? Inside your brain is so electric that you don't really need the magic elves. You don't need the Keebler's helpers to the brain, the neurons are already, they produce such high voltage and wattage that, they do their own thing, right? And so what winds up happening in the brain, a healthy brain, glutathione is almost always on deck, right? Glutathione is almost always on deck. I just erased that to put it back. Cysteine is almost always on deck, right? Why? Because glutathione is an antioxidant, right? Partially responsible for REM sleep also, right? It contributes. The glutathione cycle is a part of the REM sleep cycle, right? And then cysteine is part of what? The NRF2 system, right? So the way cells defend themselves, right? So cysteine and glutathione are always on deck. So inside the brain, whether it's dopamine, norepinephrine, doesn't matter. When the magic is happening that produces neuromelanin, it starts out with these two things in the cake mix, right? So this is why the core of neuromelanin is pheomelanin, right? The core is pheomelanin. And then after the cell runs out of these guys, then the outer part will be eumelanin. Right? So neuromelanin is a unified front. Right? So if we want to see these as black folks and white folks coming together in unity, think about that. It happens in your brain. Right? So yeah, there's that part. Right? So eumelanin and pheomelanin come together to make neuromelanin. Right? Mm-hmm. We kind of got a little crazy in the intro of the book. Yeah, I put a warning sign on the cover of the book. Like it's a lot of science in this book. We got into a lot of scientific terminology. All right, we got into a lot of scientific terminology. Okay. What else may be relevant from the intro that we could kind of go over a little bit? All right, so we almost to prayer time. You know, we gotta get to prayer time. Yo, somebody, what was that guy that was arguing with me when we did the autism video? You talking about, yo, why he got this lady in the prayer time with a big booty doing squats. You know, it's crazy. I didn't even think about it like that. You know what I'm saying? Like that might be a part of my subconscious. That might have subconsciously, I might have just been, you know, when I was making that video, I might have just been subconsciously drawn to a rather voluptuous, you know, rear end because of all the tapestry of squats. I could have found a much skinnier, I'm sure I could have found a flat booty, you know, but in my mind, honestly, when I was putting it together, that's not what I was thinking about. Right? I was just trying to find what was demonstrative of toe raises, heel raises, push-ups, jumping jacks, squats. You know what I'm saying? But interesting, right? Interesting. So yeah, we got another 20 minutes or 15 minutes before it's prayer time. Here's some numbers. Here's some numbers that's interesting. 4.7 billion. $4.7 billion ATP per second. Right? Think about that. 4.7 billion ATP per second. Right? This is why your neurons have a minimum of 2 million mitochondria each. Right? I was talking to Caleb the other day. See, those type of typos show up in the book. I wrote second and forgot the C. But I was talking to Caleb the other day. Was it Caleb or Chase? One of them. And I was describing fast twitch and slow twitch muscles and mitochondria. We was kind of having a conversation. And whoever it was, they asked me about, like, is the brain muscle, like how does the muscles in the brain? And I was like, yeah, well, the brain doesn't. Yeah, just think about muscles have an average of 2,000 mitochondria. Neurons have 2 million. Yeah, the brain is good. They don't need like 2 million mitochondria, right? And this is where the problem comes in. This is where the brain disease comes in, right? This is where the brain disease comes in. So we have neuromelanin issue, but neuromelanin issue is related to mitochondria issue. And the mitochondria issue is because we're running these engines. Like, we run these engines. And this is a low number. 4.7 billion ATP per second. This is when you're in like second or third gear. This is not when you're having gamma wave activity. So this is not when your mind is extremely focused and active and you're at school taking a test, or you're, making love to your wife or whatever, like, this is not, you're on a roller coaster. This is not at those moments. This is when you're relaxed. This is when you relax, just cooling out. This is how much your mitochondria have to work. This is per second. This is per second. Think about if you ran an engine of a car like this. You would expect that the engine would blow if you don't put the right oil in it. You would expect the viscosity in that engine to blow if you don't put the right oil in it, right? That's kind of like where the Botana oil comes into the conversation, right? At least for me anyway. This is an easy cheat code. Like, it got both things in it that's supposed to go in there, the vitamin A and the vitamin E, right? But this is the math behind the madness, right? This is the math behind the madness, because in order for your dopamine neurons, your dopaminergic neurons, to produce dopamine, right? They got to rev these engines a little bit, right? So they got to take this number even higher, right? They got to take that number higher and then produce the dopamine. And then even that has a threshold, right? And so they have to take the dopamine high enough, right? They got to take the dopamine even higher to produce neuromelanin. Which is where all of the magic happens. So all of the supercomputer stuff that goes on in your brain happens with this black stuff. Yeah, this is where the quantum, all that magic, all that, where they had a big scientist sit around and pretend like each person know what the other people talking about. You know what I'm saying? Like, the magic is happening right in here. This is where all the quantum processes are happening, because the main thing that neuromelanin does is sequesters iron and copper, right? And so you know what that is, right? Let's make it make sense. You know what iron is. It's the most magnetic natural element, right? You know what copper is. Copper is the most electrically conductive biological element, right? When you look at the periodic table, you got gold and silver as more electrically conductive than copper, just naturally, like out of the ground. But your body doesn't really accumulate silver at all, right? Your body, silver goes through your body to the toilet, right? Your joints in certain places will accumulate gold, but whole nother conversation, right? Copper is the star of the show when it comes to electrical activity in the human body. So what happens when we put electrical together with magnetic? Ta-da! Right? Ta-da! The magic, right? You get electromagnetism, right? And what happens when we have alternating electric fields and magnetic fields? We have light. So it should make like all of these, like it should just be common sense, right? If we cover all this up, we know what pigment does. Pigment interacts with light. That's why we started our conversation, right? The aromatic amino acids, the hexagon, the benzene ring, we hexagon, the interaction with light. So neuromelanin, grab some iron, grab some copper, right? Just makes sense, right? Neuromelanin is a mason. He's got to get his working tools, right? What we doing, right? We trying to get more light. We got to get our working tools together, right? We need the iron, we need the copper. What we doing, right? So that we can do what? Electricity and magnetism. Boom, right? So wherever the quantum action is happening, right, in terms of facilitating consciousness and memory and information flow, right, is these guys, right? It's these guys. So that's one of the things, like we forget when we have in a scientific conversation, we forget the other parts of science that needs to be mentioned all at the same time, right? We got to put it. So even mitochondria, right? When we discuss mitochondria, right? Think about this. Watch this, right? Because this should blow your mind. You know what I'm saying? Because this has to be a part of these conversations, right? Think about this. When we talk about mitochondria, right? They're like, Inky, how do you mix fat booties in with neuromelanin and mitochondria? I don't know. It just comes natural. I'm from 158th Street in the Bronx. So this is just, booties kind of mix in with a lot of, basketball, Chinese food, reading a good book, just all kind of mixes in. But anyway, mitochondria, right? When we have the mitochondria conversation, we think about electrons, right? The electron transport chain. And the people that know a little bit more, they go, okay, so the electrons kind of like pull, protons. Protons go from the inner matrix to the outer matrix. And so it's about electron movement and proton movement. And so we have this whole conversation about electron transport chain, right? And how the electron transport chain basically controls the movement of subatomic particles, right? Because an electron and a proton are subatomic particles, right? We have these whole conversations all day. Like if you go through YouTube and you just flip around through YouTube, everybody's mitochondria. People don't know what they're talking about, right? But it's a buzzword. It's like pH back in the early 2000s or alkaline, whatever. So, but we forget subatomic particle. Wait, subatomic particle. Hold on, Ink. So what you saying about subatomic? What do we know about the nature of subatomic particles, right? They can be particles, but they might not be. Right? They can be, but they might not be. Right? They might just be waves. Right? They might just be waves. Right? Right? They might just be waves when we're talking about data especially when we're talking about information flowing through the brain, right? Once we get to the subatomic space, it could just be waves, right? And what are we talking about when we have the mitochondria conversation? It's also the pigment system. Mitochondria conversations are part of the pigment system. Not only does mitochondria have dopamine receptors, but mitochondria, the electron transport chain, is made out of hemoglobin. Those are pigments. And what do those heme groups do? What do those pigments do in there? They work with iron, copper, and sulfur. The same three things that's going on with the neuromelanin: iron, copper, and sulfur. Sulfur, in case you don't know, sulfur is glutathione. Glutathione is made out of sulfur, and cysteine is made out of sulfur. So anytime you hear glutathione, that's sulfur. Anytime you hear cysteine, that's also sulfur. Those are sulfur. Yeah, those are sulfur molecules. Just whatever. Sulfur. You know what I'm saying? So just think that way. Right? So when you have the mitochondria conversation, same conversation. Right? The science is the same. It's the same conversation. Right? You got a pigment, you got iron, you got copper, you got the magic going on. Like, it's this is complicated, but it's really not complicated once you figure out that there's only a few moving parts here. Right? It's only a few moving parts, right? Okay, so there's heme, that's a pigment. There's the iron sulfur clusters. And what's happening? Electricity. Oh, we got moving electric fields. Moving electric fields create moving magnetic fields, and moving electric and magnetic fields produce light. And then we back to the... Okay. Where we at? Prayer time. Okay. It's all right. It's going to make sense to somebody. Somebody going to figure it out. And like, okay. And sometimes, you know what? The science can get distracted, and then you might need to see a booty. You know, I say, I don't know. I don't know. But I promise you, it was just, I didn't mean to, it might have been a subconscious thing where I just was finding some squats, and somehow that just, I don't know what happened. Maybe we should do both. Maybe we should do both prayers. So that way, yeah, maybe we should do both. Let's do the one. Let's do the prayer with no demonstration, right? We'll do the prayer with no demonstration. That's just breaking down the body. And then we'll do the one with the exercises so you could follow along better.
Inky prayer number 2. We give thanks and praise to the Most High God for the divine spark that set our cells into perpetual motion. We give thanks for the magnetism of the Most Holy, the magnetism that repels and attracts the ferry boats of light 60,000 miles every 60 seconds throughout our vessels and caves. We give thanks for the ability to drink clean water every 60 minutes, flooding the river of life. We give thanks that sugar has not covered our ferries and turned them into stone. We give thanks that darkness has not covered the riverbanks with calcium and turned them into stone. We give thanks that anger and fear have not turned our almonds bitter, turning our heart to stone. We give thanks for smooth sailing upstream through the valley of death, through the superior vena cava into the right atrium. We give thanks for smooth sailing around the heart through the corona crown, joining the vortex in the right atrium. We give thanks for the perfect black solar repeater that induces the primary electromagnetic wave, opening the mouth of the Kodesh HaKodeshim. We give thanks for the mechanical wave produced when the mouth of the Kodesh HaKodeshim closes. We give thanks to the ray wave, reflecting on the semi-lunar valves, opening a pathway to the vineyard. We give thanks for the mechanical wave produced when the lunar gate to the vineyard closes. We give thanks to the Most High God that provides the light and our breath, and the light in our breath. We give thanks for the fine olfactory system that makes our grapes ripe with light. We give thanks for the Jed pillar that provides us with a stable fleet of ferry boats to dock in our vineyard. We give thanks for smooth sailing through the pulmonary vein into the storm of the left atrium. We give thanks for the perfect black solar repeater that induces the primary electromagnetic wave, opening the mouth of the Kodesh HaKodeshim. We give thanks for the mechanical wave produced when the mouth of the Kodesh HaKodeshim closes. We give thanks to the ray wave, reflecting on the semi-lunar valves, opening a pathway into the holy royal arch of the Wa scepter. We give thanks for the mechanical wave produced when the lunar gate into the holy royal arch of the Wa scepter closes. We give thanks for the magnetism of the most holy, the magnetism that repels and attracts the ferry boats of light 60,000 miles every 60 seconds throughout our vessels and our caves. Amen.
Okay, so hopefully, right, just the body parts, no external body parts to distract folks. Right, if we still rocking at 3:00 when prayer time come back, then we do the demonstrative, you know, with the squats and the toe raises and all of that good stuff. All right, but you can always, if you need that prayer, you know, either one, they're on my YouTube page. So go to Dr. Inky YouTube page and they're right there. Just in case we're not live and you're trying to get it in and you forgot, right, that you're supposed to do your toe raises, then your heel raises, you know what I'm saying, and then your squats and then your push-ups and your jumping jacks, and, you know, visualize the trip through the heart and lungs as you know. Anyway, right? Okay. So much good stuff to talk about, though, with this dementia conversation. Where should we start? Here's a nifty place for us to start this conversation that you might not think, right? You might not relate these two things, right? You might not relate these two things. But you know, that's what we do in Inky Vision. You know, we have great pattern recognition, right? So that's what we do. Pattern recognition, right? So the book will probably be out tomorrow. All goes well, the book will be out tomorrow, right? Pattern. Oh, so here's where we probably, we start our discussion. think I spelled that correctly. Right? Glycogen depletion. Right? Glycogen depletion. Right? You are almost never going to hear a dementia conversation start off with glycogen depletion. See, that's the big problem in the health space, right? You're not going to hear glycogen depletion unless you're talking to a super, one of them guys look like, Ronnie Coleman in his prime or Christopher Bumstead or, you got to look like you're a bodybuilder. Then you're talking glycogen depletion. Right, you're not going to have like the little, the guys that 60, 70 years old, but they look like they still young. You ain't gonna get the doctors because this is not a part of their repertoire. They're not having this conversation, right? But we're having this conversation, right? Because this should be the gold standard for dealing with dementia. This is free. Glycogen depletion is the most powerful free treatment that there is. So that's how we do. That's why you got to hit the Cash App, hit the super chat. You know what I'm saying? Subscribe to the paid Patreon, because we go right with the free treatment, the most powerful free treatment. Right? Glycogen depletion. Right? This is the guy. Right? This is the guy right here. Free treatment. Right? Free dementia treatment right here. How does glycogen depletion work? Better yet, for those of you that don't know what glycogen depletion is, how about we do that? Right? What is glycogen depletion? Right? So remember, we had the conversation about the different types of muscles, right? And we went into the Osiris, right? We went all the way back to the Legend of Wuxia, right? So if you don't have that book, right, go and get that book, right? If you don't have this book, you're slacking, right? It's on sale now too. Remember, this was $199. This is on sale now. But we had the conversation about the different types of muscle tissue, right? Slow twitch, kind of fast twitch, and then fast twitch, right? And we had the conversation about different types of mitochondria numbers, right? There's almost no mitochondria in fast twitch muscle because they don't really produce energy. Instead, the fast twitch muscles store glycogen, right? They store glycogen. That's what they do, right? So they store up the fuel. Boom, right? Now, the interesting thing about glycogen depletion, because now that you pop that into the front of your mind, like, oh, glycogen is the fuel for fast twitch muscle. So depletion means that we must be using up all of the fuel in the fast twitch muscles. Got it. Ink, you back on that exercising program. Yeah. Right. So glycogen depletion, right? When we empty the fast twitch muscles, right, we clear out triglycerides, cholesterol, blood sugar, all that happens because we deplete the glycogen, right? That sends all types of signals through our nerves, to our brain, to start getting some chemistry going, right? We need some chemistry. We need you to get in the kitchen and start cooking up, right? And the kitchen is where? The kitchen is the liver. So as soon as we send the signals to the brain that we need cooking up to go on, the liver start to getting busy, right? The liver start to getting busy. And now you get more of those, what's those things? The good cholesterols, even though that whole thing is a mess. because there's really only one type of cholesterol. And then when you talk about LDL, HDL, what you're talking about is vehicles for the cholesterol, not the actual cholesterol itself. But anyway, you have some of these vehicles, they bring the cholesterol from the liver out into circulation. And then you have some other vehicles that take the cholesterol from the liver and shuttle it off into cells or back to the liver, right? Or rather, from the blood into cells or back to the liver, right? And so when you go through glycogen depletion, one of the signals that you send your brain is you need anabolic hormones. We ain't even going to say testosterone. We're just going to say anabolic hormones, right? Because these are the hormones that repair the body, right? Well, your body makes those hormones out of cholesterol. So glycogen depletion signals your body to start making those hormones. So automatically your body got to go, grocery shopping, go get you some cholesterol and some ingredients to start making these hormones, right? Boom. Blood sugar drops, right? That's always a good thing. Right? Because blood sugar gets converted into glycogen to refill up the muscles, right? So that's a good thing, because when the blood sugar drops, right, that signals the brain for melanin concentrating hormone. When the blood sugar drops, that signals the brain for melanin concentrating hormone. Right? Now, melanin concentrating hormone is then going to send out to the brain the bat signal to start producing all of those other hormones to get you hungry. Right? But all of that stuff that you hear like Jack Cruz and all these goofy guys talk about, leptin and ghrelin and orexin and all of those things are downstream from melanin concentrating hormone. This is the initiator, either direction, right? Either direction when you're dealing with appetite and sleep and circadian anything is right here, right? So even the circadian rhythm conversations is part of the pigment system. So when they say everything is about the circadian rhythm, they're really saying everything is about your pigment system, because melanin stimulating hormone, melanin concentrating hormone, that basically is the circadian system, right? But anyway, so blood sugar goes down, signals melanin concentrating hormone to go up, right? And then this will make you either eat, right? Because you get hungry, right? This is what marijuana, right? Cannabis, weed, you know what I'm saying? The the za, the exotic, right? This is why you get the munchies, because THC stimulates MCH. The stronger the THC is, the more MCH you produce. And this is why you get hungry. Anyway, so what's going to happen is now you're hungry. You can either eat, right, which kind of stops the process. Or if you stay hungry, right, your brain is going to continue to produce, it's going to continue to amplify the signal, right, by producing more and more melanin concentrating hormone. After the melanin concentrating hormone gets produced so much and you ignore it, the amount of melanin concentrating hormone, it hits a threshold. There's always a threshold where a switch is flipped and your body kind of gives up on you taking care of business and starts to take care of its own business, right? So that's when autophagy and ketosis happens. right? So both of these are part of the same program. So because your body is saying, we hungry, we need, and you're ignoring your body, your starvation survival kit then kicked in, right? So autophagy is primarily recycling proteins back to amino acids. Ketosis is basically scavenging for, so autophagy is scavenging for amino acids, and ketosis is scavenging for sugars. All right, we're just gonna make some, gluconeogenesis. We're just gonna make some sugars. We're gonna make some sugars. We're gonna figure this out because we need some sugar, so we're gonna make some sugar. Right? So anabolic hormones is going to chew up some cholesterol, blood sugar dropping, MCH gets produced. If you ignore if you get hungry and then you go dust off a carton of milk and a half a sleeve of Oreos, this you don't win in reverse. You don't win in reverse, right? So just know, you gotta see this thing through, right? So get on the other side over here, we're going to start to recycle spent proteins, and that helps big time with dementia, because literally one of the hallmarks of brain disease is tau proteins, right? They say, oh, you get the tau proteins from the amyloid beta plaque and blah, 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 blah. Autophagy, we're gonna clean up some of them tau proteins. Yeah, we're gonna make general taus. We're gonna make general taus. Your body gonna have general taus chicken. Yeah, it's gonna eat those spent tau proteins and all that stuff. So autophagy is good for dementia, right? And then ketones, your body loves ketones, right? Period, especially your brain. So that's a good. But it starts here with glycogen depletion, right? So you can get some of these same effects by just fasting, right? You can get some of these same effects by walking your 10,000 miles a day. Your 5 or 10,000 steps, right, will get you in the game, right? But that's taking the slow approach, pun intended, because you're getting here through slow twitch muscle fiber activation, right? So you're going the slow road with the walking and the right. Now, if you combine getting your steps and you got some squats and some push-ups in, and right, and you on the 60 and 60 program where you're not worried about reps as much as how many you can do in a certain time frame, right? Because that's maximizing fast twitch muscle, right? Remember, fast twitch is literally fast twitch. So when you're racing against the clock to try to do 60 squats or 60 push-ups in less than 60 seconds, that's a fast twitch activity. Glycogen depletion. Right. And once the glycogen gets depleted, then obviously your body starts relying more on stabilizer, other muscle groups and all kinds of other stuff. But anyway, so glycogen depletion, right? Super duper free treatment for dementia. Free treatment, right? Free treatment, right? It's not free though. You got to pay with sweat equity. See? That's when we get into our lingo, right? No fiat is accepted for this. Sweat equity, right? Spend time paying attention. You got to pay with sweat equity to get you the ROI. This is your ROI right here, right? Okay. And I guess we'll have some more conversations, so I can skip some of this stuff. And then some of this stuff is not for YouTube, right? We start talking about the VMAT2 gene, right? Those discussions are not really for YouTube. right? But the VMAT2 gene is a transporter that's responsible for neuromelanin production, right? So we'll introduce that, leave that right there. You get the book, you read all about it. If not, you might be missing something that you need to know about, because that's one of those, we'll just leave that there, right? The VMAT2 gene, let me see. Dopamine, blah, blah, blah. True love shouldn't be.
Myron!
Ooh,
Myron!
what?
What are you doing? What you doing?
What you talking about? What am I doing?
You reading them nasty books again, right, Myron?
Man, nobody read no nasty books, man. You scared the hell out of me. What you talking about, man? Wait, I ain't did that in about 2 weeks.
You called yesterday too. What you reading? What you reading?
You scared the goddamn book, man. Dr. Inky. I went on Amazon and got 3 Dr. Inky books because I'm reading about melatonin and biochemistry.
What is, Myron, that's not even a, first of all, it's not melatonin and whatever it is that you just said. It's melanin and biochemistry. You can't even pronounce the word, so how you reading? How you reading, Myron?
I'm not looking at the pictures. I know I look at the pictures. I got the books right here. I'm looking at the pictures. You know, it ain't nothing nasty about this. So what are you talking about? I got all the books right here. What are you talking about?
Myron.
Okay, just because I feel like we should get we should have a little pineal gland talk, like just pequeño, poquito, right, just a little. Un poquito, right? Just a little tiny bit, right? Un poquito. That's a little tiny bit. All right, we need to talk about the pineal gland a little bit. So, the first thing we need to talk about the pineal gland, just real quick. We just touch it. We just touch it, flip it, baby. Once you turn it, leave it, start. We just going to touch the pineal gland just a little bit, and we out of here, right? Just a few little key little things I think are important to note, right? Right? The pineal gland is a facilitator for the third ventricle. Right? When the baby is born, the pineal gland is a part of the roof of the third ventricle. Right? It almost looks like some sort of weird sex organ from the third ventricle. Like it is a limb of the roof of the third ventricle. Like that's right. right? Calcification and calcite crystal. Okay. The calcification, first of all, your body grows stones. Right? That's one of the things that was part of the ancient mystery systems. You get in the philosopher's stone. Philosopher's stone is it's a part of the journey within. Right? And it's a part of the journey within because your body literally makes rocks, living rocks. That's what your skeleton is. When things go wrong, though, right? When things go wrong, your body makes rocks in the wrong place, right? So you get kidney stones, stones in your gallbladder, your blood vessels literally turn to stone, right? Because you get the calcium hardening and, so your blood vessels turn to stone. The soft tissues in your brain can get, calcium building up, right? But the problem with pineal gland is too much make-believe and mystery, foolish talk. The pineal gland is supposed to have calcification. It's supposed to make rocks in there, right? That is one of the things the pineal gland does. It makes calcite crystals. And you have these crystals inside your pineal gland and inside your ear. You have little crystals, right? Because a part of your body's magic making process is piezoelectricity, right? Converting mechanical waves, pressure waves, sound waves into electrical signals, right? So your body converts light or electromagnetic waves into electric signals. It also converts pressure waves, mechanical waves, right? Sound waves into electric signals, right? So there's that. Like most of everything else that is amazing in your body, it is also a part of the dope game. Right? So it is regulated by dopamine. Right? It is regulated by dopamine. Right? So this is a primary example of kind of what we're talking about with understanding how stuff works in your brain and further extended out into the body. Because like I said, mitochondria all have dopamine receptors. Right? What else do we need to know about the pineal gland? Let me see. Let me see what we have here. Blood flow, microcrystals, blah, blah, blah. All right, so it's a combination of things, right? But just add this into your mind, right? Here's a part of your body's digital signals, right? So just think of a lot of places in your brain. It goes like this, right? There's a lot of places in your brain where this is just how simple it is. Ones and zeros, binary coding, right? Stop, go. right? So the thing that makes your body look like it's more complex than this is that you have a lot of different proxies, like a lot of different things, variables that stand in for the 1 and the 0. Right? Some places it might be calcium and magnesium, or calcium and something else, or it might be GABA and like something that like it might be different glutamine and GABA, maybe, you know what I'm saying, like but binary, go, stop, because pretty much everything in your body has like a one-track mind, like it does this. So all you need to do is turn it on, and then it starts to going and producing whatever it needs to produce. And then you stop it and it stops. Like it kind of gets that simple. What are they doing out there? Cutting trees down in front of my house? I really like all the trees in my neighborhood. Like, oh, and so here is one of the main sites, Max Holloway, right? I'm about to erase this and move on. So Max asked me about circadian rhythm. Here's one of the main places where circadian rhythm is running, right? So here's multiple levels to, right? So the circadian thing, if you want to see one of the most prominent places where it sits inside of the pigment system, right? Or functions inside of the pigment system, right? When you get sunlight, right? We might put this back. Okay? Right, you got these guys. So reception of sunlight is going to come with this, and this is a whole group. When you see this is a group. This is a gang, right? Whenever you see melanin stimulating hormone, that represents a whole gang. That's POMC. That's coming with like adrenaline stuff, and yeah, that's coming with like adrenaline stuff, endorphins. So it's coming with a little dope fiend for you. Yeah, it's coming with endorphins, fat mobilization. So fat, yeah, we just put fat mobilization stuff. Lipotropin, I believe it's called, fat mobilization, right? So there's a whole bunch of stuff that comes with this. And even this is not a this. It's like an alpha melanin. It's an alpha melanin stimulating hormone and a beta, and this is a few variations of melanin stimulating hormone, right? But so the sun is going to stimulate this. The sun is also going to stimulate this, right? So this happens at one time, right? This happens at one time. You get all of these guys to go out as a part of the go signal. Go for sunlight. Sunlight, go. Whoop, on button. Everything is on, right? So even cortisol, that's a part of these, the adrenaline, that's a part of the adrenaline from the cortisol. All that's a part of the go. Time to wake up, right? Time to wake up. Time to get busy, right? Even the human body, even our life is binary, right? It's daytime, it's nighttime, right? It's daytime, it's nighttime, right? That's another cheat code that we have associated with glycogen depletion. Right? There's another cheat code associated with glycogen depletion. It's later on in the book, but I'll tell you the cheat code now, right? Because I'll probably forget about it if I don't tell you right now, right? So the other cheat code with glycogen depletion is it's a part of the circadian rhythm, right? But you got to know the whole, like you got to go through the science to really make it click. Right. So think about this. We have this word, which we use way too much indiscriminately. Right. Energy. Right. I got enemies. Got a lot of enemies. There's something wrong with their memory. They're trying to take away from a nature. Right. Energy. Right. Definition of energy. The definition of energy is what? Right? Because this right here, this word is a part of the whole circadian rhythm thing. And the circadian rhythm thing is about the dementia and the brain disease thing. Like they all goes together. Centered around this word. And now they're going to kill me. They're going to kill us outside with the lumberjack routine, with the chopping the trees down. Woo! I thought I overdid it. You know, sometimes you have that blue magic and you be scooping some into the blender and into the, I said blender, in the blender. And you done scoop too much, but because you got other ingredients and all that in there, you can't really take it out. You gotta deal with that. That's what. Anyway, the word for the definition of energy, the scientific definition, is the ability to do work. Right? The ability to do work. So we got to have that in our mind when we're dealing with whatever we're talking about. Right? Because it starts there. The spiritual world, right? Spirit. The world of spirit is energy. Right? The spiritual world, energy. And what is that? The ability to do work. Right? We've gotten totally by the lap of luxury. We living in the lap of luxury. That's why we need a luxury tax, because we living in the lap of luxury where we just consume energy for the sake of it. We just, oh, this is delicious. Oh yeah, this is delicious. Let me get a box of those. We go to places and they give away samples. The Chinese folks are the masters of this. They will literally follow you around a food court, sample, chicken. I be feeling the way sometimes. I'm like, now listen, why you ain't following some of these white folks and Mexicans around asking them if they want chicken? I done passed on the chicken. I'm cool. I done had chicken for about 40 years. I done had 50 years worth of chicken. Yeah. We advanced now. We eating fake chicken. You know what I'm saying? Like, we not eating real chicken. What are you doing walking around? We're not even sure that is chicken. So first of all, we already in advance the fake chicken, and we don't even trust y'all. We don't know if that's rat, bird. We don't know what that is. That might be pigeon. So But they understand. Free. And they done got that dipped in. That one little free bite of chicken, that might have a half a bag of Domino sugar on it, because it's going to hit. They're counting on releasing that dopamine when you taste that little piece of chicken. Where is your booth at? They done annoyed you, followed you around, violated you. As soon as you get that taste, that sugar explosion. Where's your restaurant? Where's you over? Okay, well, how much is that? You might not even have planned on getting that. You might be planning, Well, you know what? Let me just get a little side. Hold on, babe. I'm going to go over here and grab me a side of this chicken. What kind of chicken is that? Yeah, I'm going to get me a little side. Y'all want some? Because y'all ain't getting none of mine. You want me to get you some of this? Because you ain't getting none of mine. They done threw off your whole program now. You got to get some of this sugary foolishness. But anyway, energy is the ability to do work. So inherent in the idea of energy, because remember, that's the whole idea of sugar. Right? So let's take this back to the beginning. The sun comes down, shines on the plants. Right? The plants use water, hydrate the carbon, and in the process of hydrating the carbon, capture a little bit of this for everybody else. And what is it that they're capturing? The ability to do work. That's what a carbohydrate actually is. The blessing. The carbohydrate is the blessing. It's the ability for you to move your body. So your movement's supposed to be synchronized to the amount of carbohydrate you consume. Now, by the end of the day, you're supposed to have depleted your body of the energy, right? The carbohydrates. And now you're supposed to go to sleepy time. Yeah, that's how I talk to my babies. Like, no, it's time to go to sleepy time. We can't have the snack time and sleepy time. No, because then that's times table. That's the times table. This is a sleepy time. If you trying to have a snack time and sleepy time, we're going to have a bad time. That's not how we... We got to make sure we have our times table correct. The times table is going to get all messed up if we had the snack time and sleepy time, because in sleepy time, we can't have a snack time because that's going to give us energy. And then we're going to have a wake time. And then that's going to cut into my daddy time, and I might be trying to bust a move after dark, okay? So, yeah, we got to make sure our timetable is we got to have our multiplication correct, right? So, energy, ability to do work, right? So, when is the ability to do work? That is what the daytime is for. That's the Bible makes it clear, right? We're supposed to live in the land of the Bible. Everybody's supposed to be Bibled up. Christians, Seventh-day Adventists, Jehovah's Witness, Jewish, Catholic. We're supposed to understand daytime, right? So that's the circadian rhythm. So daytime is when it's time now to jump on the treadmill, right? That starts with palm seed. That starts with melanin stimulating hormone. That starts with dopamine, right? That starts with dopamine going to the pineal gland, right? Dopamine going to the pineal gland. And when dopamine gets to the pineal gland, right, it tells the pineal gland, turn over, right? Now it's time for you to convert the melatonin into serotonin. Right. So now, boom, we on. Dopamine and serotonin together. We on. Cortisol. It's up. Now we have ability to do work. Right. Now we have the ability to utilize. Right. So that's a part of the whole system. Circadian rhythm is not necessarily just the clock. It's understanding. Matter of fact, that's why we got the Divine Mathematics book, which, of course, I'm not going to be able to find right now that I need it. Right? Especially now I got my other bookshelf in the maybe I should go get it, though. Because in the Divine Mathematics book, we kind of lay it out so you know how the biochemistry is working throughout the day. If you don't have the Divine Mathematics book, you know what I'm getting ready to say. You might want to... Is that the Divine Mathematics book? I think it is. I think it is. Yep. Yeah, that's yeah. It's that. It's that. Right? So that's the whole concept with the energy, right? The energy thing. Ability to do work. Life is about working. Right? That's why your organs and your glands and your bones all are on a pay to play basis. Your body is on a pay to play basis. If you don't use it, you lose it. So you have to pay with sweat equity in order to maintain anything. You have to pay sweat equity, period. So you can't think that if you use machines to count for you and read to you that your brain is going to somehow be strong and healthy. That's not a real thing. You have to read and count with your own brain in order for your brain to continue to grow and develop and, tree of life, cerebellum, and all that other good stuff, right? All right, so dopamine, pineal gland, downward cascade, as a part of, you getting your sun and your, all that good stuff at the right time, right? All of that good stuff at the right time, right? So typically at the nighttime, we are supposed to be resting. We're not supposed to be consuming starches and sugars, right? So typically your last meal should be right before sundown, not after. Typically, while it's dark outside, you should not be eating at all, right? That is the best 12-hour cycle. Like if you got to choose when to be on your daily fast, that is the time. While it's dark outside, don't eat. Don't eat. But I know life be lifing. So sometimes we got to modify stuff and move it around. But just know the way you're designed, that's not what you're supposed to be doing. That's hibernation time. You're supposed to be resting. And even when you sleep, if you got a belly full of food, your body is not at rest. Your body is not at rest. Your body's still hard at work. So you're not getting into none of that autophagy. Like none of that's kicking in for you with a belly full of vegan, Beyond Burgers and all whatever you think you got going on. That's just not happening for you. All right. Man, so should we just jump right into the top 10 ways to build more dopamine and neuromelanin besides using the botana oil? All right, let's run through some of these. Yeah, let's run through some of these. Some of these are self-explanatory. What time is it? Some of these are self-explanatory, right? We kind of already discussed it. But sometimes you got to say it again in a different type of way for it to click for some people, right? Because they may not really realize that you're talking to them. You know how we do. Somebody be talking to you and you be like, oh, you talking to me? Like, you talking to me? Like, yeah, I'm talking to you. Right? So, because sometimes different conversations hit different, right? So we might be having the conversation, and then we're talking about, the Shikimate pathway and aromatic amino acids and whoop, and, all that. But then people like disconnected from reality They running around. They might be following the SABI program. They're like, oh, protein is not real. I don't need protein. Okay, well, you're in trouble. This message especially for you. Because if you eating a bunch of other stuff, then chances are you're getting in your aromatic amino acids. But you specialized diet folks, right? You specialized diet folks, or you vegans that don't have a lot of variation in what you eat, which is natural. It's natural for us to have, whether we vegans, keto, pescatarian, whatever it is, or we just eating, like it's natural for us to find preferences and kind of stick to what we like to eat. Just natural, right? Especially if we get a good price, good price. Sometimes we releasing dopamine just looking at the price alone. Like, man, is that on sale right there? Hey, well, you start looking at the children. Y'all see that right there? Hey, put that back. Put that stuff back. We getting ready to get these right here. No. Put them back. We getting ready to get a whole bunch of these right here. We're going to have these till next week. We getting ready to get everything on the shelf right there. Just put all them in the cart right there. Yeah, sometimes the sale price, right? So the thing we got to remember is if you eat a bunch of everything, typically you kind of by default get a lot of stuff in, right? But if you have a specialized diet where you're on a raw this or vegan that or keto, whatever it is, high fat diet or whatever you're trying to do, you have to remember that your body has daily requirements and you have to knock those out. You have to get those in. So you have to remember to get your aromatic amino acids in. I don't even think I have to write that down. Right? I don't have to write that down. Right? So if you're a meat eater, you straight. If you're a plant eater and you're eating, your beans and your lentils and all, you straight. But if you one of them folks somewhere in the middle, where you're not exactly eating meat because you're eating fake meats and, fake cheese and real pasta, you missing fake cheese with real pasta and all. Like, if you're in that middle space, transitioning to like indefinitely transitioning diet, you need to make sure you get you some. Yeah, you got to get those aromatic amino acids in. And then here's the other thing. I didn't even write this in the book because I done wrote it in a bunch of other books, but I probably should have wrote it in this book also, is fructose. Yeah, now, we done had the fructose conversation 1,000 times. I should have put it in this book. But it's in other books. That's why we got a bunch of books, right? Fructose inhibits your body from metabolizing, aromatic amino acids. So you have to be careful. This is one of the ways that alcohol damages your body, right? A lot of people get confused because fructose doesn't show up as quote unquote blood sugar. Blood sugar is measured usually strictly as glucose. So sometimes your fructose level sky high, but because you're checking for glucose, you think you okay. You not okay, right? Yeah, you're not okay. That's why I'm not a fan of, some of them other, agaves and all these other expensive, foolishness, right? So, but the liquor, you just got to be careful because that fructose stop your body, so. You got the silent low, if you want to go down the conspiracy theory, this is there, you know what I'm saying? It can be construed. It can be construed, that, with the combination of fructose and then the chemicals attacking the plants where they produce it could be construed that your pigment system's under attack. You know what I'm saying? Especially when you see how many dummies. I mean, man, there's just a lot of folks, and you're like, yo, how come this person is a? You'd be like, wait a minute. I think Inky said this person might be. So instead of now saying dummies or idiot or something like that, now you might switch up the lingo and be like, this person is neuromelanin deficient. You gotta be like, yo, they running on low levels of dopamine. I can see the norepinephrine. You know, any one of those, norepinephrine deficient. But norepinephrine, it's like, I don't know, it got too much syllables. It don't just flow off the, you know what I'm saying? Like, but that low dopamine, yeah, they might be low dopamine. That dope, yeah, they might need a hit. They might need a fix, right? That dopamine running low. Okay, exercise, right? We talked about exercise. Vampire type sleep, right? Vampire type sleep, right? Sleep affects your receptors, right? So remember, you got your ion channels and all of these membrane proteins that accept molecules and ions and all of this stuff in and out of the cell. Sleep, right? And to have good, deep vampire sleep, your belly needs to be empty. Right? You need to be empty. You need to be on your glycogen depletion. You need to have that's why sometimes if you have a really hard work, you have a hard day's work, or you go to the gym and you really get at it, or when you go to sleep, you have that nice, peaceful sleep because you got glycogen depletion. That's where that super peaceful glycogen depletion. Think about vampires. They starving. They don't have any food. They had super levels of glycogen depletion, right? So you got to have that sleep. Prayer and study. We might have to have a whole nother conversation about prayer and study and how they affect the brain. Music. Saturated fat. Do we need to have a saturated fat conversation? Man, should we even go into this? Because this is a rabbit hole. This is a crazy rabbit hole right here. I'm not even sure I'm comfortable. I'm going to keep it short. I'm going to just keep it short. Because it's a whole new thing that we got to discuss. Science done, we in a new space in terms of diabetes. There's another type of diabetes, right? Remember, we already, we keep track of this stuff. So we already at 13 different types of diabetes. Right? There's literally already 13 types of diabetes out there. There's now a new form of diabetes, right? A new form of diabetes.
Myron!
Dude,
Myron!
what?
What are you doing? What you doing?
What you talking about? What am I doing?
You reading them nasty books again, right, Myron?
Man, nobody read no nasty books, man. You scared the hell out of me. What you talking about, man? Well, I ain't did that in about 2 weeks.
You called yesterday too. What you reading? What you reading?
You scared the goddamn book, man. Dr. Inky. I went on Amazon and got 3 Dr. Inky books because I'm reading about melatonin and biochemistry.
What is, Myron, that's not even first of all, it's not melatonin and whatever it is that you just said. It's melanin and biochemistry. You can't even pronounce the word, so how you reading? How you reading, Myron?
I'm not looking at the pictures. I'm not looking at the pictures.
I figured that we probably should just go right to an article for this, because this is just, this is so far out there. This ain't even gonna sound good coming from, you know what I'm saying? Like you just need to hear this from the horse's mouth. Insulin resistance in the nervous system. Okay, now when did this go? When did this go viral? Okay, so we're about 12 years into this. Insulin resistance in the nervous system. Metabolic syndrome is a cluster of cardiovascular risk factors, including obesity, diabetes, dyslipidemia. Insulin resistance is at the core of metabolic syndrome. In adipose tissue and muscle, insulin resistance results in decreased insulin signaling, primarily affecting downstream phosphatidylcholine 3 kinase signaling. We're just going to leave that right there. It was recently proposed that neurons can develop hyperinsulinemia induced insulin resistance. I'm going to read that part again. It was recently proposed that neurons can develop hyperinsulinemia induced insulin resistance. One more time for the Umar trifecta. It was recently proposed that neurons can develop hyperinsulinemia induced insulin resistance, which in turn results in injury to the peripheral and central nervous system and is probably pathogenic in common neurological disorders such as diabetic neuropathy and Alzheimer's disease. Bro, that is bone-chilling scary right there. That is bone-chilling scary right there. That is crazy right there. Like that is frightening right there. That your individual neurons, individual nerves can become insulin resistant. This diabetes thing then went to, just in case you didn't know, insulin resistant, that's diabetes. That's crazy. Listen, that's crazy. That's crazy. And how did that come up? Because we at the juncture in the conversation where we're discussing saturated fat. Saturated fat does that. Yeah, saturated fat contributes to nerves and neurons becoming insulin resistant. Woo! I can't even tell you how ice cold and wicked that game is right there. That's crazy. Right? So we might want to cut down on the saturated fat. Right? Just saying. I know some of y'all are sending me messages about beef tallow and all kinds of foolishness. I'm going to just say, just refer to the timestamp, that part. Like, go back to that part. Timestamp, go back to that part right there. Okay. What else we got here? Oh, that's another crazy one. That's another crazy one. Oh my goodness. Okay. Microbiome. Right? So the fiber part for my Inkitarians. You know, Amber just said we need a shirt that says Inkitarian, pigment, and fiber. Right? I thought about her when I was writing this. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, Inkitarian, pigment, and fiber. The fiber part, that part right there. Right? there is a large part of your microbiome that produces dopamine. So they are part of the dope game. There's a large part of your microbiome that produces dopamine and runs on dopamine signals, right? So there's that part. Okay. Some of this stuff I'm skipping because we'll obviously have to have multiple conversations. I don't want to be too redundant. Sodium and potassium. Sodium and potassium is another one of those binary couples, right? Sodium and potassium is another binary couple. And so nature, remember, the natural ratio is 4 times as much potassium as sodium, right? Why? Because overexcitation, because of sodium, will burn you out, burn out some of your fuses, right? So there's that, and we kind of go through heavy science with, okay. You know what? I think I'm going to do a tau protein video. I might just have to do a whole tau protein video. I think that's what we need, a separate video on tau proteins. Can you tell that I came from the dope game? Yeah, we're going to do a whole tau protein separate video.